So this week in the Sacred Gathering, we're going to be looking at a passage out of Isaiah chapter 55. This is a passage in which God is kind of inviting out of many of the things in which we seek satisfaction, in which he's offering what is kind of truly the good life. It sounds like something that, of course, we would jump at, right? But I just wanted to remind us the context here is Isaiah is teaching a people who have been living in exile, who no longer live in their homeland, who are in a host culture that was at one point hostile for sure, but over time, have they maybe gotten a little comfortable? Are they used to living in this place and the kind of rhythms? Are they being survivalists, right? In which they're just making do as best they can, in which God's work again now is going to require maybe getting up and moving, which is going to require different rhythms and patterns. So I think passages like this are a wonderful invitation, and yet they're one that we have to be careful of not to take too lightly, because we recognize that when God is in motion, it is often going to disturb kind of our own comforts, our own rhythms of life, the things that feel familiar. So Isaiah chapter 55 starts with this. O everyone who is thirsty, go to the water, and who has not silver, buy food and eat. Go buy food without silver, and at no cost wine and milk. Why should you weigh out silver for what is not bread, and your substance for what does not sate? Listen well to me and eat goodly things, and you shall enjoy lavish fare. So a couple of quick thoughts on this first section. First, I want us to recognize that this image is one that people kind of go back and forth about, like what is actually going on here. It's the image of maybe a vendor that's on the street, right? Of God calling out and showing his kind of wares. Here's what I have. I want to offer you something good. Other people have thought maybe this is more from like the Proverbs tradition, in which wisdom is personified as a woman who is inviting to kind of this lavish banquet. Either way, I think the important thing is invitation, right? God is not forcing his people here or in the modern world to turn toward things that will, in this language, that will slake our thirst, that will satisfy, that will sate our deepest longings, right? God is inviting, but we also always have the choice, the ability to make the wrong choice. As the Bible is going to argue, we often do. I also want to point out that the invitation here is a very earthy one. It's just talking about kind of food and drink and feasting and enjoyment, right? This is not a passage that people who are going to want to make this kind of duality between the worldly things and that we should move on from them in some way and be more spiritual, right? This passage is God offering kind of the simple, most basics for life. And that's something that the passage does very intentionally and symbolically. It starts out with the invitation, right? Go buy food and make sure you have enough water. So God is wanting to provide our most basic needs, but it moves on from there. At no cost whatsoever, you can have wine and milk. These are symbols of a slightly more lavish life. It even says that, I love this, you shall enjoy lavish fare, a good spread. God brings the good stuff, right? God is not just interested in giving us the bare minimum. God is inviting us into something that is whole and something that is rich and something that is good, a deeply enjoyed, full life. The catch, I think, for this passage in many places in the Bible is that we're often going to try to turn them into what's often called the prosperity gospel, right? If I follow God, then I will get what I want out of life. And the problem is, what I want out of life is so often trained into us, taught to us by the host culture. This is the disruption I was talking about, right? We think that if we pay in some ways, if we do good religious things, then bad things won't happen to us. Then we will be comfortable in the ways that the culture is defining. And that, I think, is one of those lies that we have to be careful of in this passage, right? It says, why do you weigh out silver for things that are not bread, for things that will not ultimately satisfy you, and the substance of your being for that which will not sate you, which will not satisfy? And I think that's the trick. of most of what we're doing. We're missing both pieces of this passage. We are trying to treat God as kind of an obligation, and if we jump through the right religious hoops, he'll have to give us what we want. When I think the invitation is the opposite. God is saying, let me come and satisfy you. Let me teach you what it is you actually are needing and wanting, what this longing deep within you is. And it's probably not going to look exactly what you had in mind in the first place. It's not going to look like what you have been trained to see as prosperity and goodness, right? So that's the kind of catch that I was talking about, this disruption. God really does want to offer us what we need most out of life, what will most satisfy us. We just are often wrong on what those things actually are. And so this is the tension we sit with in this place. What is it we turn to satisfy us, to fill our deepest longings, to make sure we have the resources to get by in life, which is not a given, right? Many of us are struggling to even make the most basic things meet. And so what will we turn to? What seems to work for those around us, or will we turn to God and trust him not only to provide for our most basic needs, but to bring a wholeness, a goodness in life on his terms, not on the terms that we or the original exiles were often thinking? But the passage doesn't stop there, although it often does in our readings, right? Because it continues with something very important. Come bend your ear, come to me, listen and be revived. And I will make with you a perpetual pact, the faithful kindness shown to David. Look, I made him a witness to the peoples, prince and commander of the peoples. Look, to a nation you shall call, and a nation you did not know shall run to you, for the sake of the Lord your God and Israel's Holy One, for he has made you glorious. So, the thing that this passage is looking at is, again, okay, if we're in exile, we're going to be looking back to the good old days of David. Now, David is a very special king in Israel's history and all overall salvation history, but David is a guy who has a long and complex life, right? He starts as a complete nobody, as a shepherd, as this boy who first shows up on the scene by fighting a giant based on his own faith. He then is going to become a warrior that everyone's so proud of, but then he's going to live in exile and he's going to be unjustly persecuted just for doing the right things. And later in life, when things have kind of gone his way, he's going to become a psalmist, a poet, right? Someone who has this deep heart and connection with God. He's going to become a king in every sense, including the abuse of power and the corruption and a kind of a rotten father. And there's a lot to like about David's life, and there's a lot to criticize about David's life. You can look at him as kind of this humble person who receives goodness from God. You can look at him as this powerful figure, a king, a warrior, etc. And often, I think, with figures like David, what it is we're highlighting, what it is we're wanting to talk about and see in him probably says a lot more about us than who he actually was as an incredibly talented, wonderful, and deeply flawed human being. And I think Isaiah is playing with this in some ways. So I think for us to understand kind of the appeal that David would have had to this original audience, I want us to ask just like, so who are some of our heroes? Who are the people we look to as maybe saints, right? Who are the people that pop up in your mind that you're just like, I wish I could be more like them, but I never can be like them? These are the people who are in the stratosphere. They're so inspiring. It's so incredible the things they did or continue to do. I could never be like that. Those are the sorts of people that we idealize. Those are the sorts of people that just feel so different than us that I think are being brought before us in this passage, right? David. But listen to what this passage is actually doing here. It says, I will make with you, the broken exiles, you, the unimpressive modern day church, I will make a pact with you, the faithful kindness shown to David, right? Because David, good or bad, one of the most special things he did was he had a very incredible relationship with God in which even when he screwed up, he kept going back to God, and God did some amazing things through him, right? So this passage is actually doing something that this is not God's work concentrating in a hero or a saint like David, if he could even be qualified as those things. It's all of you. It's you, the dispersed community. It's you, the not impressive group of people. I've heard this called the democratization of David's kind of special covenant, David's special call, right? I've made a perpetual covenant with you and your people, and it's now being expressed in the exiles, in a group of unimpressive people, just like Jesus as the Messiah is David's heir, and yet he continues to express his goodness and his blessings and his relationship with the rest of the world through the often unimpressive church in the modern world, right? And I think this is one of those important things that we need to be wrestling with if we really understand this passage. God does desire to bring goodness. God does desire to bless and bring wholeness. But as we heard in this passage, even someone as impressive at moments as David, he's not the center of attention here. Look, I made him as a witness to all the peoples. I made him a prince and commander for everyone else. Even nations that you didn't know about are going to be attracted, are going to show up and be interested in what it is that God is doing. And so if that is true, and if this incredible blessing, witness, way of showing God's goodness in the world that was in David is now being dispersed among the exiled people, among the modern day church, what is it that God has provided for us? What are some of the ways that we have experienced God's goodness, right? Why are we even here having this conversation? Because we believe God has done things in our lives. We have experienced some fullness, even though there may be tension and fear, etc., in our lives. But this passage reminds us not just that God wants to provide, not just that God wants to bring the good stuff in a big and full life, but just as David led a very blessed life in some ways, he was doing so for the sake of others, for the sake of the wider world. And so anything we have experienced in God, anytime he's provided for us and brought us goodness, that is actually for a world that, again, is looking for a different kind of satisfaction, that is looking for protection in according to this passage and others, and maybe the wrong places. And so this is what is thrown before us. Why is it we're going out and buying food? Why is it we're looking for bread? Why is it we're looking for things that won't satisfy in the wrong places? The invitation is, come and find those things in me, God is saying. Come and find those things in me for the sake of your sisters and brothers in the rest of the world. Come and experience my provision, my satisfaction, my goodness, so that they too can be drawn in and they too can experience it. And this is being taught to a group of people in exile, right, who have not experienced these things there. And so this passage ends with these two simple kind of commands, these two simple invitations. If we want to live this kind of life, seek the Lord where he's found. Where is God found? Call to him where he is near. He is near to us. He is desiring this for us. He is offering and invitating this and offering invitation to us yet again to come, not because we have things we need to exchange, not because we have things we need to buy, because God wants to freely give a life of provision and goodness on his terms that we can share it with other people. Will we, in fact, seek God till we can receive this? Will we call out to him because the promise is he is near?